É melhor ser alegre que ser triste. Alegria é a melhor coisa que existe. É assim como a luz no coração. Mas pra fazer um samba com beleza é preciso um bocado de tristeza. Preciso um bocado de tristeza. Senão não se faz um samba, não. Fazer samba não é contar piada. Quem faz samba assim não é de nada. Um bom samba é uma forma de oração. Porque o samba é a tristeza que balança. A tristeza tem sempre uma esperança. A tristeza tem sempre uma esperança de um dia não ser mais triste, não. Põe um pouco de amor numa cadência e vai ver que ninguém no mundo vence a beleza que tem um samba, não. Porque o samba nasceu lá na Bahia. E se hoje ele é branco na poesia, se hoje ele é branco na poesia, ele é negro demais no coração.
10-year-old Fanny is among the youngest victims of the Boko Haram insurgency. After her mother died, she went to stay with her father in Baga. Just a day later, Boko Haram militants stormed the town. Hundreds were killed, including her father. Hawa Amadou found her alone by the shores of Lake Chad. She took Fanny on the long and difficult journey across the water to the refugee camps.
When I found her, she had already been drinking water from the lake and was sick. So when we arrived at the camp, I took her to the hospital and she got better. Then we got her some new clothes and came here.
But Fanny's not the only one to find herself in a strange place without her family. It's thought there could be 100 or more separated and unaccompanied children across the various camps. Aid agencies hope that by moving people to the main camp here in Bagasola, there'll be a better chance of reuniting them with their families.
We've
barely been here for a week, but the movement of people from the other camps to here is underway, so I'm optimistic that this will provide the right conditions to begin finding my family members.
Fanny will never find her parents, but she has been taken in by Hawa, and here at least they feel safe. Clementine Logan, CCTV, Bagasola, Chad.
Since the outbreak of clashes in northern Nigeria, Niger has faced a continuous influx of people crossing the border. There are more than 100,000 displaced, but don't expect to see all of them in camps. Majority lives outside camps. Villages like this have been hosting up to double of the local population. They open up their courtyards, they offer their shelters. You can see people has been allowed to build a shack. WFP started emergency distribution and is providing a complete food basket of cereals, lentils, oil, but also for pregnant and lactating mothers and children up to 5 years old. We provide a very nutritious food to prevent malnutrition and reduce mortality risk.
Our main message at the negotiations is that the most food insecure and vulnerable people are the most at risk from climate change today, and that urgent action is needed to help them build their resilience to climate change. Climate change means more floods, more droughts, and more storms. The most food insecure people are often the ones who live in the most degraded environments, dependent on agriculture for their livelihoods. When a drought or a flood occurs, they lose assets, they're forced to reduce their consumption of food, they're forced to pull their kids out of school or migrate in search of labor. Unless we help these households become more resilient against climate shocks, they'll be unable to adapt to a changing climate, unable to become food secure, and unable to realize the development dreams that they have. Over the last 10 years, 50% of WFP's operations have helped people affected by climate disasters to recover. We've spent $23 billion responding to climate disasters during that period. One of the fundamental goals of the climate change agreement is to protect food production and people's economic well-being. Food security is at the center of climate change discussions. At the climate change negotiations, countries will gather together to talk about how they address the challenge of climate change, how they address its root causes, but also how they help people adapt to climate change and deal with the impacts of climate disasters. At the negotiations, WFP will be helping countries to understand in more detail the impact of climate change on the most food insecure and vulnerable people, and most importantly, help governments understand the things that they can do to help those people to adapt and to deal with climate disasters in the future. At the same time, WFP will be listening to countries to understand how we as a United Nations agency can help those countries prepare themselves for the changing climate. I mean, what we want to achieve is that the climate change agreement adequately includes provisions to help the most vulnerable food insecure people to adapt to climate change, to make sure that they're protected against climate disasters, and to make sure that people can ultimately thrive in a changing climate. There are three main areas where WFP wants to share its experience with countries at the climate change negotiations. We've been doing a lot of work on analysis of the food security impact of climate change, which can help countries develop their own plans for dealing with food security and climate change in the future. We'll share our innovative work on climate change adaptation, resilience building, and risk management. WFP is the second largest multilateral implementer of the UN FCCC Adaptation Fund, and we'll be working with countries to improve adaptation programming for food security. We will be focusing on supporting countries in their negotiations on agriculture, food security, loss and damage, and climate finance.
Just back from a 3-day fact-finding tour, and the United Nations aid chief was shocked by what she witnessed.
It was extremely painful to see. People are exhausted. Many of them have travelled for days. Many of them have moved multiple times. And if it was painful for us to see, can you imagine what it was like to live through?
The conflict erupted in December 2013 between President Salva Kiir and his former deputy, Riek Machar. Regional mediators have been struggling to secure a peace deal, talks in which China has played a leading role. But the impact of the conflict on the ground is severe. Thousands have been killed, and many more have fled their homes.
7 of every 10 refugees is a child. Just think about that. Children whose future is being blighted. So the leaders of South Sudan, the government and the opposition, need to think about their people. And I have to say that we felt very strongly yesterday that if they actually went out and saw the conditions in which their people are living, it might actually mean that they would pause and think again about the importance of peace.
The next talks between the government and rebels are scheduled for next week. 1 in 5 South Sudanese will need food aid by March this year, and the situation could get even worse if the conflict continues. The UN is now calling on the leaders of South Sudan to give peace a chance in order to end the suffering of the millions of men, women, and children. Kofam Reje, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya. Just back from a 3-day fact-finding tour, and the United Nations aid chief was shocked by what she witnessed.
It was extremely painful to see. People are exhausted. Many of them have travelled for days. Many of them have moved multiple times. And if it was painful for us to see, can you imagine what it was like to live through?
The conflict erupted in December 2013 between President Salva Kiir and his former deputy, Riek Machar. Regional mediators have been struggling to secure a peace deal, talks in which China has played a leading role. But the impact of the conflict on the ground is severe. Thousands have been killed, and many more have fled their homes.
7 of every 10 refugees is a child. Just think about that. Children whose future is being blighted. So the leaders of South Sudan, the government and the opposition, need to think about their people. And I have to say that we felt very strongly yesterday that if they actually went out and saw the conditions in which their people are living, it might actually mean that they would pause and think again about the importance of peace.
The next talks between the government and rebels are scheduled for next week. 1 in 5 South Sudanese will need food aid by March this year, and the situation could get even worse if the conflict continues. The UN is now calling on the leaders of South Sudan to give peace a chance in order to end the suffering of the millions of men, women, and children. Kofam Reje, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.